Brenda Mahoney with Arlington Community Media, and I'm here with Jim Feeney, the Assistant Town Manager for Arlington. He is also now, officially as of January 1st, because of the new public records law, you are the Public Records Access Officer for Arlington. So can you tell us a little bit about what that means and what it is that you're helping people to do with the Public Records Access Law being more now easily accessible to residents?
Sure. So,
the public records.
As you mentioned, Brenda, one of my responsibilities is now to serve as the Records Access Officer, and that's a designation that is required by the new law. So each municipality will now have to designate one or potentially more records access officers with the primary goal of coordinating a town's response to public record requests, but also establishing guidelines and assisting residents to make requests for public information.
And we can get into a little bit more of that two-sided approach, but a little bit of background information. The public records law in Massachusetts hasn't been updated in about 40 years. So this was an update to the public records law, and part of it being that before, if people not necessarily in Arlington, but residents and communities throughout Massachusetts found it cumbersome, burdensome, where they weren't able to get the public records, and towns said that it cost a lot of money to produce that. Now you're able to provide the public records online as a central kind of depository, I would say, or a lot of these records were already available, I would think, online from what I know that I've searched before on arlingtonma.gov. So tell me a little bit about, what is now in the kind of the repository of the public records.
Sure. So, I will applaud the town of Arlington, because there's been a sort of a long-standing tradition and goal of providing transparency. So we had already taken many of the steps to post commonly requested public records on our website. They were located in different locations, which we've now tried to consolidate and provide a dedicated web page for accessing public information. But I imagine there are some municipalities out there that we'll have to start under this new law by taking some of those steps that, we took many years ago on our website with, the goal of providing easier access to public information. And, we've long posted meeting notices, meeting minutes. We have a place to search for building permit information on the website, RFPs, bids, bylaws, regulations. We have just a great deal of information already on our website. So, we were ahead of the curve in that regard. But, as it relates, generally speaking, to the public records law, it was updated. It didn't substantially change what constitutes a public record. It changed, or it overhauled the process for obtaining a public record, and, the practices that we have to follow in terms of responding to a request have been formalized as well as expedited, and the new provisions of the law were crafted to hopefully make accessing public records more affordable for the public and to make it move a little bit more quickly than it had in the past.
Right. In the past, it was up to the town as to how much they charged for either research or actually making copies if they weren't available electronically. Now, under the new law, it's also 10 business days, as opposed to before, I believe it was 10 calendar days, a little bit of a difference there for a response to a public records request. And then the 4 hours of free time for research. How much time and response is going to be taken, do you think, expect of your time? This is a new official position for under your assistant town manager duties. How else was this done before if someone wanted a public record, and how is this process now going to take up your duties? How much time of yours do you believe?
So in my position, I'll be helping the resident or the requester to streamline the process. So if you're requesting property-specific information, for example, the requester may go to the Board of Health for specific environmental information about that property. They may also need to go individually to the Conservation Commission, or maybe the Redevelopment Board or Zoning Board of Appeals regarding development information, or maybe the Building Department regarding building permit information. So, previously, a requester may have had to submit multiple requests for public information to various entities. In my role now, we're trying to streamline that process and provide sort of a single clearinghouse for that information. So you can submit one request, and it'll be my responsibility to reach out to the various applicable departments and gather their information and coordinate it into a single response.
And is there any way to track, because it went through so many different departments in the past, how many public records and requests you've had in the past?
I can't say anyone was really taking a coordinated approach to tracking how many requests we got, or how long it was taking to respond to them, or what was being charged. So now we're going to make our best effort to collect and catalog that information so we can understand how many requests we get on a regular basis and how quickly we're able to respond to them.
And it's going to be overseen by the state public records. All municipalities have to report the end of the calendar year, I believe, how many requests they got, and perhaps even how long it took to fulfill those requests, and whether or not there were any problems in fulfilling them.
Sure. So there's a slight designation there. So there's two different types of records access officers. There's one, like myself, who works for a municipality, but there's also an agency records access officer, which would be someone representing a department or agency at the state level. So there are slightly different requirements under the current law. The actual documenting and reporting of the requests and all those information is currently only a requirement of a state records access officer. But that may even change in the future and become a burden at the local level. But nevertheless, that's something we're going to proactively do, and we'll be able to at least report on that internally, but I don't believe we're going to be.
Okay, I must have misinterpreted the law. Thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
So let's dive into a little bit then of, first off, how we get to the where that central repository is if I'm looking for a public record.
Sure.
There it is right there. It's on one of your scrolling images now as to how to access public records online through arlingtonma.gov.
Indeed it is. So when you get here to the town's webpage, you will see there is a spotlight regarding the new Public Records Center found on the website. It can also be navigated to in a few other ways. The primary way I envision residents accessing the Public Records Center would be here through the first tab on our bar here that says I want to, and then looks like the fifth choice down, I want to make a public records request. So someone would simply click there and they'll be redirected to the new web page that has been established to consolidate the public records contained already on the town's website, but also streamline the process for making a request for information that they were not able to locate on the website. So there is a dedicated form that's linked through this web page.
And that is new itself, the dedicated form.
Indeed it is.
Okay, so let's go ahead and first, let's just go ahead and scroll through. This is obviously
So this is some introductory information as to what a public record is, and it serves as a guide to help the public gain access to records that are in the town's custody, and help them understand what some exemptions may be, as well as provide links so that people can read the full text of the new public records access regulations, and obtain any additional information from the Commonwealth Secretary of State's website. So again, we start here with some background and introductory information as to what public records are, and the longstanding tradition in Massachusetts of providing access to the public. So then we answer the question here, what public records are available? So as we talked about before, there are commonly requested records that are regularly posted to the website for viewing, at your convenience. There is a redirect here to the school department's website for getting information about the Arlington Public Schools, but then it sort of dives right into a list of what have historically been some of the most commonly requested records, and essentially these are redirects to where they were currently housed on the website. So this is serving as that sort of repository that you mentioned of, here's all the information that you would have had to navigate to in other locations on the website and know where to find it or know that it was already there to get it. And just to name a few, again, budget and financial information.
Let's go ahead and show that one because that one is very rich if we go to that link.
Indeed it is. So then we would get redirected to the town webpage that's already established for financial budget and information. In which you'll find here again is a bit of a preamble about financial information in general, but as well as access to some of the tools that are available to the public that they're intended to provide real-time updates or visual representations of financial information, as well as access to specific formal documents, including what we call the PAFR, which stands for the Public Annual Financial Report, as well as annual budgets, financial plans. So again, this is a single location where you can go to find various financial and budget information
and
documents.
again, reiterating, this is all data that was already there. It also sits under, we can't see the URL that it went under here, but it's town governance and the financial and budget information. So that's just, if we go back to the public records, that's just simply linking to information that was already there. One of the other ones, so if we go down to, we've obviously seen bylaws and regulations before, I believe, public works information, town meeting warrants. The one that is not available online, because this is going back many years, I think, is if we go ahead and click on the birth, death, and marriage certificates, what the process is for that if someone wants to find that information.
Sure. So, again, these are records,
Vital records.
like you said, that have existed for a really long time, and people regularly access them through the town clerk's office, and there is, a long-standing process that they follow for accessing those. So from the Public Records Center webpage, you would get redirected to the very specific instructions that already exist for, again, accessing a birth certificate, a death certificate, or a marriage certificate. Mm-hmm. And, those particular vital records are governed by certain state laws. But these are things that people are commonly looking for, and we want to make sure they had access to the information.
Just so people are clear, something that is vital records, that is likely to never really be completely posted online. That would be scanning, documents, and I suppose there could be, even though it is vital, it's public information, but it's also...
There may be restricted access to certain
mm-hmm.
pieces of vital information.
Exactly. Yes. So the other one that I found very interesting, though, tell me what you think is new on here, but to me, what I'm seeing as new is the crime reports.
So this isn't brand new. This is something that could previously have been found on the police department's website, but someone may not, again, have known it was there or that it was readily available. So we thought it was a good opportunity to pull it here into the Public Records Center so that someone could visit that webpage and, sign up for emailed reports for crime in their neighborhood.
Do you mind just going there for a moment? Because
Sure.
it is very rich and unique, and for people who may not have realized it was there. So it was in this form as well, with we have the map here and all of the incidents listed by date and statistics view that you can do. So this was available?
It was. This
Okay.
was a tool that, had previously been employed at, the police department offering, a great service to residents. But again, we're just trying to make sure, or try to increase utilization of the tool and, disseminate this information proactively. So we're hoping that, just simply by locating this crime report information inside the Public Records Center, even if someone wasn't necessarily looking for that information, it's likely that they're going to click onto this page, being intrigued or, wondering what information is contained there, and then potentially signing up for these reports.
Right. For people who don't know, you can actually see a map view of what type of crime there was and where. So that's something that's certainly if people want to find out about that, that information is right there. And then what other records do you expect, or do you have a sense of, that people may be requesting that aren't currently online? I know this is new, that you are the central person for this, so I believe, as you've said, since January 1st, you've received a little over a dozen requests?
That's correct. So, we could get, at times, you get a request for a public record, for a record that may not actually exist. So someone may be looking for information that's not currently contained within a public record because they're trying to answer a specific question or research a certain topic. And in those instances, as the records access officer, I can communicate back with the requester that we may not have the specific record that they're seeking, but let them know what types of information in records we do maintain and see if that may be helpful to their cause in terms of whatever question they're trying to answer or topic that they're trying to get more information on. In other times, it could just be someone's requesting a copy of a certain piece of correspondence, or maybe a memorandum that isn't necessarily typically posted online because it was, between two departments or something like that. But someone certainly has a right to access that information if it is provided.
And what are the ways that people can request actual information?
Sure. So that, we can't require that someone request information in a certain way, but what we're hoping people will do is, if they're not able to locate the information they seek on our webpage, again, we have a section here on how does someone access public records. And if they're not able to locate the desired record on the website, what we want them to do is fill out this electronic form here. So here's a form that can be completed digitally. So obviously we're requesting to have the requester, at a minimum, fill out their name in their email address. And we ask for their email address because the state law now requires that the default mechanism of response be that we provide an electronic record, unless, of course, that person doesn't have the ability to receive an electronic record, or we don't have the ability to provide that that record in electronic format. So we do request someone's email address so that we'll be able to respond to them and provide those electronic records. So someone would describe, the records that they're seeking. Are they looking to receive a copy of the record, or are they looking to view or inspect in town offices? Maybe they wanted to come in and, view a large format print or drawing, and, they're certainly welcome to do that too. So if someone elects to receive copies, they would again have the chance to say they want them via email or received by hard copy. And I'll show you, if I could just show you one other aspect of this tool here. So we do have, again, if someone were to navigate just to this form, we have the ability to redirect and provide, again, some of those commonly requested documents that we talked about before. So if someone selected, say, financial and budget information, but hadn't reviewed what was already on the website, they would then get another opportunity to view, some of those tools and information that we just showed. And, a lot of maybe prospective home buyers or someone just moved into a home may want to review building, recent building permit history, for their home.
That's one thing that I wanted to point out. For instance, this one says 1991 to present. So as you said, the law is to encourage that the default is that you provide documents, public records, electronically. And we, for the last 10 years or so, I guess, the town has a lot of the materials electronically. But if someone is requesting for information, say, previous to something that may have not been scanned yet, or so is there an ongoing scanning of documents to, for years past? Is that kind of an ongoing archivist program going on here through the town hall? Or
at certain times it has been for certain classes of records. I would say, in response to specific requests, even if the record or document that someone's seeking is not currently in an electronic format. We do have the ability in many of our departments to scan the documents in at that time as PDFs so that we can then respond electronically.
Generally, I mean, how far back do records, paper records, go for the town of Arlington?
I mean, some records predate, 1900. I've seen records back as far as that, and I know for a fact they go well beyond that. That does lead into a discussion of the records retention law. Some records are required to be maintained, in perpetuity forever, while other records can be purged following a schedule provided by the Secretary of State. It could be, maintain it for 1 year, maintain it for 7 years, maintain it forever. So there is, sort of a catalog that we would go through and make a request through the Secretary of State's office if we were looking to purge a certain class of records and it was eligible to be purged.
If we have time for one more show and tell, and then we'll just ask a couple more questions and wrap up. But one more show and tell, which I thought, if you don't mind if I just
Sure.
jump back here. Property assessments. I would think that that's, a lot of people want to find out what their property is assessed at, perhaps, or they're interested in what their neighbor's property might be assessed at, or even perhaps a town-owned property.
Sure.
So I was thinking of doing 85 Park Ave, which is where ACMI is located. So if we put in, actually we can just type it in, you think?
Yeah, you should be able to get it to autofill. Mm-hmm. Just type in the number 8 here, we should get access to it. And again, the property information was available at different, has been available for quite a long time in different parts of the website, but over the years, even before the implementation of the new public records law, we've been trying to consolidate all of the information you could possibly imagine through our GIS coordinator, just trying to get property-specific information consolidated. So,
I mean, that's, I don't know, I'd have to say that's beautiful.
It really is. I mean, knowing where to vote and what day to put your trash out on, it's
yes,
really
that's everything right there. Just
quite
searching
comprehensive.
everything, including what school if you had a student there, a child there, what they would attend, what the zoning is, whether or not it's wetland protected, the FEMA flood map, even what mode of transportation, public transportation.
And linked to a trip planner. So good for a new resident as well as someone who's lived here for years and maybe hasn't considered some of these particular aspects. But
right.
You can even click into and view the the property card for a specific property, and it'll give you assessed land value, building value, picture of the building. So again, these are tools that have long been available on the town's website. And we're taking this opportunity to provide a dedicated spot, via the Public Records Center, to allow the public to hopefully interact more with the information that has always been available to them, and let them know the services and tools that are available to them.
One other thing that I think with property being a big one is people want to search deeds. Now that's not done by town. Are you able? Do you get that request a lot, and you tell them to go to the county?
Yes. So obviously that is another common request, and in my role, what I would try to do is, again, I still want to facilitate that request being met, and I would, if we don't have it, I always try to find out where it can be found. So I would educate that resident that they could actually go to masslandrecords.com and let them know we're in South Middlesex, and that they could click there, and just how to navigate to find the records they seek.
Great. Providing a great public service.
Doing my best.
So there are some exemptions with the public records law. I don't know whether or not those exemptions have been changed compared to what has been on the books for 40 years, but if you could go over whether or not you know the answer to that, and what some of the general exemptions may be that I may be requesting but could be denied based on the statute.
Sure. So the one thing I would say about the new public records law, there was one update that spoke to exemptions, and that related to an organization's cybersecurity measures. That's something that hadn't been considered when the previous law had been implemented. Again, you mentioned it was some 40 years, over 40 years at this point. So that wasn't something that was necessarily considered at the time. But when it comes to, which records or which information is public, there is, a lengthy list of statutory exemptions that the town must abide by. And most commonly, I would say the most commonly cited exemption would be if someone is seeking information that's of a highly personal nature, that may be a personnel or medical file or other information that's relating to a specifically named individual, and if we were to disclose that, it could be an invasion of that person's privacy. So I would have to say that's probably one of the more commonly cited exemptions that may preclude someone from getting access to information.
And that's where, both the being balanced between the public right to know. I know there's been instances in the case, not in particular to Arlington, I'm saying, but say someone is taking disability leave and they're citing that they were hurt on the job, and we're looking, someone may be looking for records to actually see, what the determination was, how they were determined that they are actually disabled, and the monetary amount that they may be receiving. So those are types of things that might be of public interest, but under statute are not considered public record.
That's a great example. There are, in a case like that, there are going to be, certain pieces of information in those files that would absolutely be exempt from disclosure to protect the privacy of a specifically named individual. So, again, it's always evaluating the records and making sure that we don't, violate any of those statutory exemptions. But again, aside from these specifically listed exemptions, the understanding is that, records maintained by a municipality or a public agency such as Arlington are, essentially presumed to be public records, and then we would review the exemptions to make sure they don't apply.
And the Massachusetts Municipal Association was very concerned, and still is, about this law, that it could possibly be burdensome to towns and municipalities, as well as subject them to litigation. Say, for instance, you did have a public request and you were not able to fulfill it in time, or perhaps accidentally didn't redact something that should have been. What is the town's position on that?
The law may have changed, but I think our view and the way we approach public requests for information will remain the same, and we always try to respond as expeditiously as possible. There are going to be some instances, maybe for a smaller department or a board or a commission, that may not have staff support to respond under the new response times. So as you mentioned previously, we used to have 10 calendar days to simply acknowledge that we received someone's request. Now we have 10 business days to substantively respond, with the records that someone's seeking, if we have them, readily available in our possession. So that is certainly a much quicker timeline than we used to, but at least anecdotally, or from my experience working in other departments in town, I would guess that we were mostly in compliance with the new law even before it went into effect, in terms of responding as quickly as possible. But I can only imagine there will be some instances for particular, like I said, particular departments, boards, or committees where that 10-day timeline could be tough. But it's going to be my role to help assist them and provide whatever support I can to make sure we meet these new obligations.
Right, and one of the new obligations is that you can do up to 4 hours of research time before a person could be charged.
Sure. So actually, that's another one of those fine line distinctions between a state agency and a town agency.
Okay.
So
that applies to state agencies.
State agency is 4 hours. So a municipality with a population 20,000 or more has to provide 2 hours of free search, compilation, and copying time. So that will likely cover many of the more basic public record requests we get. So those will be getting provided free of charge. And again, we have the ability for those requests that take us longer than 2 hours to review and evaluate, and our position will likely remain if the release of that information furthers the public's understanding and public good, then we're likely going to waive fees for access to those records.
And then the follow-up question being, well, then, is this actually coming at any additional cost to the town then, having this public records access officer? We're in a unique position where your position was created as assistant town manager, or actually recreated as it was a position in the past. So how much of your time as assistant town manager will be spent fulfilling the role of public access records officer, and is that broken down to any actual cost therefore?
Yeah,
to your time?
I can't. We're only into the new public records law for a few weeks now. We did see, we have seen a good surge of requests for public information right away. So it has been, a big portion of my job just helping to educate other departments and establish our policies, procedures, and processes. But I would think that it's going to level out over time, but only time will tell exactly how much time is dedicated. But we need to make sure that we handle each public request we get in accordance with these new guidelines, because the new law did establish potential penalties for municipalities that fail to comply, and a citizen or a requester could even go to Superior Court now if we didn't comply or failed to produce records or denied access. We could be now held responsible for some level of punitive damage, but also that requester's attorney fees for them having to go through the process of gaining access. So the new law is there to not only promote access but also promote accountability. So a big part of my position is going to be making sure that we are in compliance with the new law, and that we're hitting each mark along the way, and that we do everything that we need to. What I'm finding interesting is to see what information the public is interested in seeing. So what I hope to be able to do is evaluate the different categories and classes of requests we get, and see, all right, well, this information is clearly desired by our residents. We should be proactively posting this on the website, or maybe we should explore providing that additional information on that topic, or providing it maybe in an additional format. So I'm excited about the prospect of considering those different options.
What's the feedback you're getting so far on having the repository of the public records online?
So anecdotally, I've only heard from maybe a handful of residents, but the electronic form in particular, I've received some very positive feedback on that, because it provides some good prompts. When they submit the form, they get an automatic response knowing that it went through, and it's timestamped, so it helps with really tracking the progress of a request that we may get.
Well, thank you very much, Jim Feeney, the Assistant Town Manager for Arlington, as well as the Public Records Access Officer for the town, helping people to get those public records, and they're available online, and anything that isn't available online, you will help guide them to finding that information. So for Arlington Community Media and Arlington Public News, I'm Brenda Mahoney.